Hey y'all, Andrew with Free Tours by Foot New Orleans. We are in the busy, windy French Quarter, and it is getting on Carnival season here, the season that leads into Mardi Gras. It's getting on Carnival no matter when you're watching this video. We're always counting down toward that season. So today I'm here to give you some suggestions about how to plan a trip to New Orleans during Carnival season. First, for a lot of people who visit here regularly, even what Mardi Gras or Carnival is a bit of a mystery. And there's a lot more to that history, which is something for another video. But basically, it begins as a Catholic religious holiday, the part of the calendar that falls in between the Christmas season and Lent. Carnival is that season, Mardi Gras Day is the day that finishes it off. Mardi Gras, the term, means Fat Tuesday, so it's always on a Tuesday, and it's this period of indulgence before you swear stuff off for Lent. So there's always this element of excess. On top of that, you also usually have some element of satire, flipping the typical order of things, the usual hierarchy on its head, and that takes a different shape everywhere you might go. So what I'm going to share with you is the New Orleans traditions, which are several weeks of float parades and walking parades, a day of costumed anarchy in the French Quarter, and some big over-the-top Mardi Gras balls spaced all through the season. So if you're going to be thinking about a trip to New Orleans during this season, the first thing you got to think about is timing. Mardi Gras is what the Catholic Church would call a movable feast, which means it consistently moves around through the years, in this case, relative to Easter. So the beginning of the season is always on January 6th, right after the 12 days of Christmas, but Mardi Gras Day that ends the season can fall anywhere from early February to early March. So in the first place, you just got to look at the calendar and see when Mardi Gras Day falls. But on top of that, our version of celebrating it, we always have a few parades on January 6th to kick the season off, but then we have several weeks of parades leading up to Mardi Gras Day. And so some people actively try to avoid coming here during Mardi Gras and think that coming here a couple weeks before the day is going to keep them free of the crowds from that time, and then they find themselves right in the middle of the parade festivities. Other people think they only have one day to enjoy it, and they end up missing out on parts that might be a lot more fun for them. So it's best to look at the whole spectrum of what's going on during this time, and luckily there's a thorough parade schedule that's out there that's published months in advance where you can see every single date and what's going to be going on at each time in what part of town. So timing is one thing that there's a lot of misconceptions around. Another one is place. A lot of people have this mental image that there's one day of parades and that they all roll down Bourbon Street. And if you've ever been on Bourbon Street when it's at its peak, you'll know it doesn't need the help. Fitting a parade down that street is borderline impossible, and they actually haven't hardly entered the French Quarter, with a few exceptions, for half a century. Back in the 60s, float parades started to scale up, and they gradually shifted from the French Quarter, where they used to roll on Royal Street, the more kind of upmarket street compared to Bourbon, over onto the wider expanses of St. Charles Avenue, which runs through uptown New Orleans. You're usually going to see a parade start around the intersection of Napoleon Avenue and Magazine Street, several miles from the French Quarter. They'll then roll along Napoleon Avenue to St. Charles Avenue, turn onto St. Charles, and gradually make the trip down towards the French Quarter. It never actually enters the French Quarter, but it'll go along the edge of it on Canal Street, which means that all of those people who were waiting for the parade to come to them on Bourbon Street, when they learn how things are actually going, they're going to flock over to Canal Street in massive numbers, and that's going to be the most crowded area to watch the thing in. So it's a really different experience at the beginning of the route and at the end of the route. This is the hardest time of the year to navigate New Orleans. Already, it can be a confusing city to get around in if you're new to it, but things get a lot more complicated on parade days. Even thinking about having a car during this time is something I cannot discourage you from strongly enough. On parade days, not only is the traffic terrible, but a lot of suburban New Orleanians are going to be coming in. They're going to be claiming the parking, and they know their way around better than even the most seasoned of our visitors. And they're going to come in at the beginning of the day, meaning that it is packed all throughout the parade days. And if you were to drive, you'd also run the risk of getting stuck inside what we call the box. So when you look at the Mardi Gras parade route, it kind of forms three sides of a rectangle, and the fourth side of that rectangle would be the Mississippi River. So wherever you are at the beginning of a parade day, a few hours before a parade, that's where you're gonna be until the parades finish running and a few more hours pass. And given that parades ride in succession to one another, that could be an entire day easily. So the area inside the box includes a lot of hotels, includes a lot of places where visitors spend time. And this doesn't just apply to cars, it applies to public transit too. The St. Charles streetcar, the bus on Magazine Street, the bus on Chapatula Street, a lot of things that are usually really reliable and helpful for visitors aren't available during this time along their full routes. Basically, Mardi Gras is a time when we trade off a lot of modern conveniences for a very, very old-fashioned experience of debauchery. So you gotta come ready for some pretty primitive means of getting around. Walking is by far the most reliable thing you can do. A bike, maybe, and add to the fact that crowds are big enough that a lot of times cell phones don't really work, and it really, really helps to have a plan in advance.
Even with a lot of things in the city closing down around Mardi Gras, one thing that does not stop is free tours by foot. Apart from Mardi Gras Day itself, for the most part, we run a full schedule of our Pay What You Will tours during this time of the year. And if you take a tour with us during Carnival, we will do our best to make sure that you know what your options are and how to participate in the celebration while you're here. If you're visiting New Orleans soon, you can find a link to our full tour calendar in the description of the video below.
So you can choose your parades partly based on timing and location. Another factor is just taste. And it's worth thinking about this because sometimes there are multiple parades happening in different parts of town at the same time. You cannot do everything during Mardi Gras. So it pays to do a little bit of research in advance and know what's gonna entertain you the most. And different parades have different personalities that can make that pretty easy to figure out. So starting with what they all have in common, every parade is produced by a crew, spelled Krewe. And these are social clubs, some of which only produce a parade and some of which meet all throughout the year and do all kinds of things. But they are just people who pay dues. The money that they pay produces the parade alongside public resources that provide for police escorts and sanitation and so on. The most traditional crews are going to be old line ones like the Crew of Rex or the Crew of Hermes. These ones haven't changed a lot since the 19th century origins of the parade tradition. In size, in design, you're still going to see a lot of similarities. Basically, they've just stopped being pulled by mules and started being pulled by tractors. Otherwise, it really is like you're stepping back in time. We have also what we call super crews, and these come along a lot later. These are the Broadway shows of the Mardi Gras scene. Big, high production value, really flashy parades that go on for a long time, double-decker floats with multiple cars connected to each other, just the most extreme production values of the whole season. If you want to find the scrappier side of Mardi Gras, those parades are going to be on foot in the French Quarter, the Marigny, the neighborhood next door, wearing DIY costumes, and a lot of times kind of poking fun at the self-seriousness of the higher production value parts of Mardi Gras. A good example of that would be a parade that walks through the French Quarter called the Crew of Barcus. It's a dog parade, and seeing dogs dressed up as royalty makes the whole thing seem a little less serious and a lot cuter. We also have in the Marigny and the French Quarter a parade called the Crew of Chewbacca, and it is basically a sci-fi convention with all of its cosplay turned into parade form, with the mascot being a Star Wars-style Wookiee decked out in grapes. So here you're seeing people dressed in costumes that they themselves made. You're seeing that satirical atmosphere, and a lot of times you're seeing more of a newcomer set of people who maybe didn't grow up around these traditions and both enjoy them but don't totally take them seriously at the same time. Another thing that separates parades from each other is the stuff that they throw. And this is a place where our Mardi Gras is one of a kind. Other places have parades, they have dancers, they have bands, but we and only we will throw things at you the entire time. And this brings up kind of a fun stat about Mardi Gras. I learned from a healthcare provider who I know that the season of Carnival is the busiest time of the year for emergency dental work. And it really gives the lie to the idea that you should be several drinks deep during a Mardi Gras parade. People need to be coordinated to grab things out of the air. And we in New Orleans, we're not the healthiest people in the world, but between swatting mosquitoes and catching Mardi Gras throws, we've got great hand-eye coordination. And the things that are flying through the air is a pretty huge variety. Most famously, it's beads. And nowadays they're made in plastic, but they used to be strings of glass beads. And so they had this kind of prestige quality. A few people along a Mardi Gras parade route would be handed these because they stood out in some way. Nowadays, because they're mass produced, they are mass thrown. Almost everybody who attends a parade walks away with some beads. You also are going to have doubloons, which are these little plastic coins, usually printed with the name of the parade, the year, and the theme for that year. These are harder to catch. Generally with Mardi Gras beads, you want to grab them out of the air if you can, if only for sanitary reasons. But if you see a doubloon land near you, the best way to lay your claim on it is to step on it and then grab it from underneath your foot. If you just reach your hand down, you're likely to bump heads with somebody or maybe have somebody step on your hand. But you're also going to see tons of other stuff. People throw stuffed animals. Once in a while, you'll see candy or moon pies. Someone once riding a float looked at me in the crowd, pointed at me, and threw me a whip. It takes all kinds of things to really fill out the variety and keep everybody surprised. But the prestige item nowadays, the things that deliver that value that glass beads used to have, are signature throws. This originates with the Krewes Zulu parade, which for much of its history has been throwing decorated coconuts. And nowadays they're hollow and lightweight, but they weren't always. So these things are sought after enough to get people up for an 8 a.m. parade on Mardi Gras morning. But lots of other parades have imitated them by coming up with some kind of signature thing that they wanted to deliver. And that's going to be everything from purses to shoes to tomahawks to goblets. It really runs the spectrum. Parades are the very public-facing part of the Mardi Gras tradition, but they're not the oldest. People have been throwing these big private parties, balls, going much further back, and they're still a part of the tradition where oftentimes right at the end of the parade, the members of the crew are going to assemble and have a big private party. And these are black tie evening gown affairs that are partly a mix and mingle kind of matter, but also are partly pageantry, where the crew's royalty gets shown off on a stage in their costumes. So going to these oftentimes is an invite-only thing. Some of them sell tickets, and more often intended for more of a spectator crowd than just an invite-only crowd is going to be the imitations of the gay Mardi Gras balls that go back to the mid-20th century, which are even more spectacular in terms of the costumes that are debuted. They have kings and queens in kind of more contemporary senses of the word, and sometimes the costumes are so huge that they need like architectural support to stand up. So if this sounds interesting to you, looking for tickets to those events could be one more good use of time before you come to town. And then finally, there's the big day itself. All of that is what goes on before Mardi Gras Day. When Mardi Gras finally comes, the tension really shifts. There are parades on Mardi Gras, a handful of them that happen in the morning, but they have to share the spotlight with a lot of other stuff. There's a few kind of organized costuming traditions, masking traditions, we would say. Maybe most famously, we have the Mardi Gras Indians or black masking Indians on Mardi Gras morning who will step out of their houses first thing, debuting a suit that they've spent the whole year, a lot of work hours and a lot of money creating, these bead and feather concoctions way bigger than themselves. And they'll assemble as a tribe or as a gang, and they will parade through the streets performing their own music, some traditional stuff, some original stuff. And when two groups meet, they'll have this kind of ceremonial battle that kind of looks like a dance-off. They improvise their routes as they go, so it's hard to guess where to find these folks, but generally by the afternoon, you can count on some of them gathering underneath a highway overpass along Claiborne Avenue, not too far from the French Quarter, and that is also along the traditional Zulu parade route, so multiple things go on there, and you'd find a lot of food vendors in that area. Oftentimes sharing turf with the Indians is going to be groups of what are called baby dolls, which are women who dress in parasols and frilly dresses and wigs, giving this kind of stereotype of hyper-femininity. And also in the Troupes, you have the North Side Skull and Bone Gang, which well before sunrise gathers in skeleton costumes and runs around the neighborhood drumming and chanting and letting the whole neighborhood know that Mardi Gras has begun and reminding them about the inevitability of death. So these are the more organized traditions, and they emanate from black neighborhoods like the Troupes, near the French Quarter in that case. You also have the huge gathering in the French Quarter and the Marigny of costumed people in no particular order. you can kind of be anything for Mardi Gras. And if you're wondering, can I participate in this? Yes, please. Anybody can costume for Mardi Gras. And in that way, it's kind of like Halloween, and you can dress up as something, but you don't necessarily have to be anything. You can just do kind of a larger-than-life, glittered-out version of yourself. Just pageantry, if you want. So you could recycle something from Halloween if you wanted, and you could certainly find costume materials here if you like. There's costume shops in a lot of different parts of town, and typically there's going to be a mask market on the weekend preceding Mardi Gras Day in the French Market. But you also can just go to a thrift store in your hometown and get some of the weirdest stuff you can find and collage it together into something. Add some rhinestones and you'll fit right in. And some people do this as part of groups. There's a big group called the Society of St. Anne that put together incredible costumes and march through the Marigny into the French Quarter on Mardi Gras morning. But plenty of people just go out as individuals, wander around, spot other costumed people, compliment them, and make friends. So you don't have to have a plan on Mardi Gras Day. It's a great day to just wander and see what you find. After all these logistics, it can be kind of a relief. After all these events, it can also be kind of exhausting. So Mardi Gras is a day that happens early and also kind of ends early. By 6 p.m., right around sunset, officially the day is over. And for a lot of locals, it's time to head home by then. So visitors will keep hanging out in the quarter. The drinking goes on until late in the day, but it becomes a quiet day. And also, the whole city shuts down for Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras is very much like Christmas anywhere else, where city workers have the day off, lots of restaurants close. Basically, only the things that keep society barely functional are going to be going on. So you do need a little bit of a plan to make Mardi Gras work.
So, if you're enjoying the tour so far, go ahead and hit the like button and help others discover the video. If you'd like to see more videos like this one, subscribe to our channel. We have walks through the French Quarter and Garden District, videos about Mardi Gras, everything you need to know about New Orleans. Visit our website for more about our tours, our travel tips, and more. We also have virtual tours and channels that focus on DC, New York, London, and more. Look for Free Tours by Foot wherever you travel. You can support your guide with virtual tips, links in the description, and let us know what else you want to see. Leave a comment below. Now, back to the tour.
And how busy is the city during Mardi Gras?
Extremely so. It's the busiest time of the year, hands down. And again, it gets packed enough that sometimes cell phones don't work. So if crowds aren't your thing for any reason, the solution would be, if you have mixed feelings about that, to come earlier in the season. Things get a lot more intense as the weeks go on, and you have parades that are happening in small numbers, like 2 and 3 and 4 weeks before Mardi Gras Day. And so you can find some much less populous times. And also, if you find a place to stay, though this takes some forethought, at the early end of the parade route in the uptown area, that's going to make for a whole lot less crowding, both at and outside of parade times. I'd also say, so we came up with this crew of house floats idea last year, and it was a way of decorating houses as a substitute for float parades, and that's continuing into this year. So if you wanted to spend time uptown getting ready for a parade, waiting for a parade to show up, or if you just wanted a way to enjoy Mardi Gras without being in the thick of the crowds, this is basically like being able to get the aesthetics of a parade, but walking around on your own, not dealing with a crowd at all, and just seeing things at your own pace on your own time. It's a beautiful alternative.
How safe is Mardi Gras?
So safety-wise, you're looking at bigger crowding and therefore kind of an escalation of anything that might normally happen in a big city. So it is definitely still a time to have your wits about you, particularly in the thick of parades. People do often drink way too much. And either if you are that person yourself, it can result in having less awareness than you should. And if you're around the people who are doing that, then you can see people acting indiscreetly. And you don't need to be several drinks deep at any point to enjoy Mardi Gras. There's plenty going on. And so I'd say keep your wits about you is the best single piece of advice I can give for enjoying Mardi Gras safety-wise and in general. The usual wisdom of traveling in groups, keeping coordinated. It's a time when people really want to be spontaneous, and that might suggest break up and everybody do their own thing. But keeping together is also one of the best pieces of advice I can give you.
How does one party like a local?
Leave. A lot of people don't stay in New Orleans for Mardi Gras. No, if you wanted to participate like someone who lives here who really loves Mardi Gras, make 7 costumes and wear them to parades and Mardi Gras Day and anything else. Compliment the people who you see wearing costumes. Be nice to the people near you at parades. Don't make it competitive. Don't grab things out of people's hands. Just be a good neighbor, I'd say, is the main piece of it. And also drink moderately for all the reasons that we've already said. Also should mention there are kind of special laws around parade routes. Basically, any time of the year, there are special restrictions on drinking outside in the French Quarter, which means no glass or metal in the streets, and that gets added to other areas when a parade is going through them. So for a few hours before and after a parade, technically you're not supposed to drink out of glass or metal in the street. You'll see different levels of enforcement along different parts of the route. Near the French Quarter, you will find that actively enforced. But it's worth bearing in mind if you're going to bring your own supply to the parade with you, bars will be handing out to-go cups regardless.
What should I pack?
So for the trip, it's worth bearing in mind that we are at the cusp of winter into spring when this happens, and weather in New Orleans this time of year can be extremely unpredictable. So anticipate rain, anticipate heat, anticipate cold, be ready for all of it. And you're going to be doing a lot of walking, so bring the kinds of shoes that'll weather that. Keep them closed shoes as well. The puddles can get particularly colorful this time of the year. Otherwise, though, and you should also think about layers in your costumes. If you're going to wear costumes, an underlayer that can keep you warm is a great thing to be able to add or subtract as the weather demands. You also should, before you leave, download a parade tracker app. To the extent that phones work, it'll really help you know when a parade is going to show up, where it is along its progression. If you're trying to rush to catch it in the middle, those can definitely make everything a whole lot clearer. Once you're here and you're going out from where you're staying for the day, it's worth packing as though you're not going to be back again until nightfall or later. So having snacks with you, having water with you, first aid, toilet paper, spare batteries, all of that stuff is a good idea.
Is it family friendly? Can I bring the kids?
It's a lot more so than people think. The family element of it is outside of the most famous areas. So there's this image of like Bourbon Street buffoonery that pervades the popular image of Mardi Gras across the board. But if you're watching parades uptown where people live, you're going to see kids are the audience in a lot of ways. So kids can have a great time at most Mardi Gras parades, with a couple of exceptions, perhaps. The main one being the Krewes parade, which rolls through the French Quarter, which the sensibility there is kind of like an adult political junkie with a 6th grade boy's sense of humor. So depending on what kind of kids you have or want to have, it might be perfect for them. For erring on the safe side, there is a suburban event called Family Gras, which is going to be kind of a festival atmosphere with a lot of Mardi Gras aesthetics about it. So that would be an option to consider as well.
Can I come watch the parade with you?
I used to live on the parade route. Could have come and stayed at my place. Every single one of you could have fit over there. Sadly, we're not there anymore, so darn.
What about king cake? How do I get a Don Juan king cake? Did I really have to be in line at 5 o'clock this morning?
Yes. Or apparently there's some delivery options. No, so Mardi Gras is not complete without the signature dose of sugar. Locals can be very, very particular about their king cake. So there's particular bakeries, there's particular parts of the season you're not supposed to eat king cake before January 6th or after a Mardi Gras day. If you're a visitor to town, get it when you can get it and get it where you can get it. Grocery stores have whole ones, so if you stock up for the trip at a grocery store, look for them there. Coffee shops and bakeries will sell it by the slice if you want a smaller amount. And Mardi Gras World, if you're visiting outside the season and you want to get a taste of Mardi Gras anytime, they serve it all year long. Y'all, I hope that makes a start on answering your questions. It's a big subject, but in the end, visiting here for Mardi Gras, if you're prepared right, can be a massively rewarding experience. Bring your questions to us in the comments. You got the wisdom of the crowd down there, and you can also find a lot of insight in our Facebook group, which you'll find a link to down below, alongside the link to the Parade Tracker app and the schedule of all the parades for the coming year. You can also find information on how to tip your guide if you want to help us out down there. Thanks for watching, and we will see you plenty during Mardi Gras. Lots more to come. Looking forward to seeing y'all again soon.